people with massive conglomerates or corporates. Business is about supporting my family, supporting my community, and I want to talk to you today about the organization I work for, which is called Paradigm Shift. And just as an introduction to myself, Keith said I'm a local boy. I grew up down the south coast in Toti. I moved down to Cape Town 2 years ago to go and start with Paradigm Shift. But my heart for economic development with ministry started many years back. I can't put it down to a particular event, but I just remember just being continuously dissatisfied with people asking for handouts, seeing poverty all around me and feeling like God wrestling in my heart, I need to be part of the solution. I need to be part of doing something to raise people up to support themselves. Amen. And it's been a journey. I've been involved with a few organizations for economic development, teaching people about business, teaching people how do you start your business, how do you run it well, and all this time working with churches and wanting to see churches supported, wanting to see families supported, but actually discipled in the faith as well. Not just to say, here's your hope, money is your savior, business is your savior, because it's not. And we need to be able to disciple people well and mentor them and coach them in business as well. So just to kind of dive straight in, Paradigm Shift is a church-initiated, volunteer-led economic development model which focuses on coaching, training, discipling, and mentoring micro-entrepreneurs. So a lot of words there, that's quite a mouthful, but at the base of this is that it's church-initiated. We can move to the next slide. And the church is the hope of the world. And without engaging the church, and without seeing the church rise up to address poverty, we're only meeting half of the problem of economic development. We can't just be seeing people raised up to earn an income without actually discipling them as well. So for us, the key things that is operating through the church. And we can move to the next slide. Poverty is not just an economic thing. We have many people. The world is largely spiritually poor. We're bankrupt. We're looking for where do I find the solution? Where do I find hope? And just in terms of an economic level, in South Africa as it is today, 1 in 3 people are without employment. And that's a massive number, and that's just within South Africa, not looking at other countries in Africa or other countries around the world. And with such high numbers of unemployment, where people aren't able to feed their families, aren't able to come home with confidence knowing that they can take care of their children, they can take care of their families, they can uplift their community. This is why we are gathered here today. We want to ask the question of how can we have the greatest impact in our local communities, given the lack of education that we see in South Africa and other developing countries, given the limited employment opportunities that people have to find work, to earn an income, and given that families are struggling to rise above poverty. We can go to the next slide. And as Paradigm Shift, working with the churches, we see entrepreneurship as the solution to poverty. Just you mentioned, this kind of brought my attention back, this guy here, his name is Joshua. When we were speaking about business as mission, he's a Ghanaian. He felt God say to him, poverty is a problem in Africa. I want you to move down to South Africa, start a business, and employ people. And this is what he does. This crate that you see behind him, this is his workshop. He manufactures and repairs upholstery and furniture. But it's such an amazing story because he didn't come as a big corporate experienced guy saying, I'm going to come and start a big factory and employ people. He felt God say, go to South Africa, start a business and employ people. So he still lives in a township. He runs his business in a township, but for him, he's being faithful And we love his story. Every time we go and visit him, just to touch base with him, he's saying, when are we taking this to Ghana? When are we taking this to other places? People need to hear the gospel through this, and they need to be uplifted with business.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And so this is an incredible opportunity that we see that the church has got to be able to empower their community, to uplift their community, and to disciple their community as well. And this is not, we want this to be an outreach of the church. This is not something that the church gives a business course and actually it's only for those in the church. It's only for the believers. We want this to be an outreach, a gospel sharing model that brings people into the kingdom. So we've had entrepreneurs on programs that have been Muslim, that have had no faith, that have been anti-God. We've had Christians in there from various denominations, and we want this to be an outreach.
Beautiful.
And there's no. We just need to be faithful in planting that seed.
Yeah.
Lives are changed through this. One of our programs down in Cape Town, our director was mentoring one of the entrepreneurs over a period of 18 weeks, and the entrepreneur that he was paired up with, at the beginning he said to our director, he said, look, I want to grow my business. I'm not a Muslim, I'm not a Christian, I don't like God, He's not done well for my family, so I don't want to hear any of it. We can meet for coffee, I want to grow my business, but we're not talking about faith. So our director said, sure, that's fine. Let's just see how we can grow your business. And over those 18 weeks, there's a relationship that formed, and slowly there was small questions that were dropped in there. So can you maybe tell me a little about your faith? And this relationship grew, and during that time, towards the end of it, this entrepreneur, his daughter was married to a chap, and they got into a bad situation, and his son-in-law killed his wife, so this guy's daughter. And this entrepreneur was a broken man. Our director, Jed, who was meeting with him, was kind of at a loss for words, because this guy still didn't want to, he was still adverse to hearing the gospel. But because of that relationship, there was a small open door. And there was space for the grace of God to actually come in and meet this man. Wow. And this entrepreneur said to our director a few months later, he said, if it wasn't for the relationship and the journey that we've walked, and the change that's happened in my own life, I would have gone up to my son-in-law and taken him out. But it's this relationship that works, and it's the grace of God that we can share with others. Even when they say, I'm not having it, just help me grow my business. Yeah. And it's such an important thing. So it's an amazing opportunity we have to build relationships. And we can go next. This is Alan Holmes. He's at Northfield Methodist Church in Benoni. He's one of our program partners, a church that runs Paradigm Shift. And the first time they ran it, he said the room that's with the volunteers in the room wanting to connect with these entrepreneurs, they felt nervous. They were wondering, where are these entrepreneurs going to come? It's cold outside, it's raining, they're a distance from our church where we're going to be training. Are there entrepreneurs going to come? Are they going to be willing to leave their businesses early and take time to invest in education? Is this going to be a worthwhile thing for them? Are we just going to be a few of us sitting around a table, and nobody arrives? And he said the change that happened in their own hearts and how they were filled with faith over the weeks, whereas these entrepreneurs continued to come, continued to move past the transport, move past the weather, and journeyed in this relationship of having business training, learning about how do I grow my business, and being discipled along the way. He said now they've been on the program 3 years later, they have a big celebration at the end of each cycle of their training, because lives are being changed, and not just economically. These are spiritual lives that are being rescued, and these are families that are being supported economically.
Wow. Awesome.
Excellent.
And we can go to the next slide. Wayne is actually, this is an incredible story that I must just tell you. So Wayne is a CEO of a big company. If I told you the name, we'd all know what it is. But he is involved with one of our churches, and somebody had asked him, hey, would you just be a mentor on this program? Would you meet with an entrepreneur just once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks, just to chat to him about his business, chat to him about his family life and his spiritual life? And Wayne felt like, I've got a business to run. I don't know if I've got time for that. My business depends on me staying with my business and making sure it's running well. So he reluctantly said, okay, I'll be involved 1 hour every 2 weeks. I think I can afford that. Over this period of 18 weeks that he was involved, actually, firstly it was the first course was 9 weeks. He met with this entrepreneur. The next 9 weeks that they moved into, I visited one of the programs just to see what's happening on the ground, just to be involved in it. We spoke to this guy Wayne, and we said, so why are you here on the weekly meeting? Surely, like, you're only supposed to meet with them during the day at your place of work, just 1 hour. He said, over the last 9 weeks, he thought he didn't have all that much to give. But God's worked in his heart so much, because he realized that even though he was coming to do business training, even though he was wanting to mentor somebody else, God spoke to him, and God changed his heart. That his whole worldview of his business and his life and his service to God has changed.
Wow.
He said, my business, even though it's a massive company, I'm not in control of it. Actually, I've given it over to God, and He's able to lead it.
Wow.
And just the impact that it's had on him, that he's been able to step away from that, invest in somebody else's life, build a relationship with an entrepreneur that he would never have met otherwise, has exploded his worldview of his role in serving Christ.
Excellent.
Very good. Very nice.
You can go to the next slide. There's a leading economist in South Africa who looked at our program and said, paradigm shift, this program that we've got, this model, is the most effective poverty alleviation strategy in Southern Africa, and it has the power to transform our nation. And what was interesting coming from an economist who's looking at the various influences in the economy, looking at the various role players that have an effect on changing the economy, of addressing poverty, of sustaining business. And for a guy to say this is the most effective poverty alleviation strategy has been incredible for us, because we've wanted to gear it and not just look at addressing poverty in an economic format. We wanted this to be addressing poverty in the spiritual realm as well,
Excellent.
to be able to bring people into the church.
Wow.
And there are many other, so it's a powerful thing for us to hear that, because across South Africa and even across the world, there are many other programs that address economic development. There are programs that address discipling and a faith journey, but we haven't found any that have been able to, or that have grown well and been sustained in addressing both economic development and discipleship and journeying with people in the faith.
Yes.
And this has really been a key focus for us, and the basis of paradigm shift is to address these two things. And we can go to the next slide. Over the last 7 years, we've seen our partnerships, our churches and our programs that are launching around the country. We've seen that almost double each year and grow. And as we stand today, we have 65 church locations, majority of which are in South Africa, and in this year we've seen that expand into other countries up in Africa as well, which has been exciting for us. And we've seen over 4,000 entrepreneurs impact. And what that means for 4,000 entrepreneurs impacted is, on average, what we've seen is each entrepreneur supports 5 dependents. So with 4,000 entrepreneurs being impacted, we're seeing 20,000 lives being supported, being impacted through this model.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
We can go to the next slide. We just look at some of the growth that we've had in 2009, in 2007 and 8. Our founders, our directors, moved their lives from America, both business people, saying to God, God, where do you want us to serve you with economic development? They both felt like God saying, son, to leave your business and serve me in economic development. And they traveled to a few countries asking God, where do you want us to do this? Where do you want us to engage the entrepreneur, or where do you want us to engage the church to address poverty? Traveled to a few countries, learning the best practice that was happening there. And they felt God say, South Africa is where I need you to be. Moved their family out here, developed and piloted the course over 2007 and 8, so that it was a South African program for South Africans and not a foreign program made to fit here. And each year we've seen the programs almost double, going from 4 up to 7, being refined a bit down to 5, and then growing up to 12, 23, 50. And at the end of this year, we're looking to have probably 75 or 80 churches on board that are going to be launching this program, having an impact in their community.
Wow. Excellent.
And we can go to the next one. And just on the same timeline, we can see we went with 127 entrepreneurs impacted in that first year, up to 203, 220, 485, 1,040 and 2,000 last year. And it's an incredible thing because as I speak to you, I'm talking from the head office that's based in Cape Town. So we don't run the program ourselves. We connect with churches, local churches on the ground in Durban, in Joburg, in Pietermaritzburg, in Cape Town, in the Eastern Cape. We want to engage those business people within the churches to empower their own communities. We can't be one office that reaches the whole nation, and we don't want to be that. We want to empower and resource and equip the local church to have this impact.
Very good.
We can move on to the next one. I saw in the program that tomorrow morning we're going to be hearing about farming God's way. And I was quite excited about that. I've actually done a short course in farming God's way. And this guy, Zephaniah, he's from Amanzimtoti, from a semi-rural area just behind Amanzimtoti. He was with the program with an organization called Seed of Hope that was based in the community, a lot of social work that's done by them. And they ran a farming God's way program. He had a small plot of land that he was using to farm on because he couldn't get a job and he needed to feed his family. So he said, okay, I'm gonna grow food. He did the farming God's way course, put some more structure into his farming activities. And as he saw that grow, he realized I'm harvesting more crops than I'm able to eat with my family. So he started selling them. He came on the Paradigm Shift program, and his business from having a farm, having a small plot of land, growing food initially just to eat, he's now able to expand that business. He's supplying stores in the town, and through that he's able to send his children to school. And it looks like in the next year, he said one of them are going to university, which would never have been a dream for him if it wasn't just for putting some structure and engaging with the church in terms of discipleship and economic development. And over the Paradigm Shift, there's different cycles and stages of the training, and the kind of core program happens over 2 9-week cycles. And just some figures on that. On average, we've seen a 62% increase in income across entrepreneurs. And that's just the average of guys that have grown their business from the businesses we are talking about are like Zevs. They're very micro businesses, informal businesses, street traders, subsistence farmers, guys who don't have another option for income and saying, all right, I've got to do something. What have I got in my hands? How can I employ that?
Very good.
And with it, we've also seen 37% of these entrepreneurs saving for the first time in their lives. And that's a big thing because often we can take, if we've got excess income, it's just assumed that you would do some saving and you would put money away. But for entrepreneurs that are surviving on a daily basis, there's not this excess that they're able to put away for the future, to be able to expand their business, to be able to invest into their child's education. And we've seen 37% of these entrepreneurs start saving for the first time in their lives. And that's, for us, that sounds like an incredible thing, but for those entrepreneurs, it's taken a shift in their mindset of realizing, actually, I'm able to do this. I'm able to hope for something, not just tomorrow, but in a few months' time or a few years' time. Rather than I'm just surviving, I make it through to tomorrow, I'm doing okay. We're going to be able to change people's hearts. They have faith to say, actually, I'm going to put something away that in the next few months, in the next year, I'm going to be able to invest into a bigger business. And we can move on. I just want to talk about the structure and the model of paradigm shift. We can go to the next slide. There are four key components to paradigm shift. Two of them I've mentioned already, which is business training and discipleship. Those are the foundation of paradigm shift. And without them, there is no paradigm shift. Because if it's not, we exist as an economic development model, but if we don't run it through the church and see people's spiritual lives change, then we don't actually have anything on offer. The other two components are mentoring and microcredit. And just to touch briefly into what those are, business training is looking at the transferable management skills across any business. So if we're working with the entrepreneurial pool, micro-entrepreneurs who have started something, they've already got something that they're employing. They're creating a product or they're providing a service that they're doing something already. They're busy, and we want to say, use what you've got, but there's often a limit of what formal education they've had or formal training of how do I run this business? How do I calculate costs? How do I manage my stock? How do I reach my customers? And this is where paradigm shift comes in. We want to say, you've got something already. You've got a skill, and we want to help you on the other side of that. We want to help you put some structure around it and be able to grow that business. So employ what you've got and see it increase, see it expand, and see your business grow. So we're looking at, as I said, some record keeping, some calculating of profits and costs and expenses. We're looking at the branding and the marketing. What are you saying with your adverts or with your logo, with your name? We're looking at, are you managing your stock well? And then we look at the discipleship, which is the other key thing. And we want to pair up discipleship so that it's relatable to what's happening on the business side of things. And we also want to make it accessible to those who have no faith, those who have a different faith, and those who are already followers of Christ that want to be discipled further. So we pair them up and we look at things like stewardship. Am I doing well with what God's given me in terms of income and in terms of the skills I've got and in terms of my community? We look at the pursuit of wisdom and truth. And am I searching after things that are right and looking to do righteousness rather than am I just looking to get an income? And then the mentoring is outside of the formal training that happens. And these entrepreneurs are paired up one-on-one with a business person, with a business coach, and they're able to talk about an individual entrepreneur's business, their personal life, rather than in a training setting where you're sitting in a group of 6 other people. You're now getting down to one-on-one meetings of what's happening in your personal life, what's happening in your spiritual life, what can I pray for you for? Are there things happening in your family that I can give you wise counsel or just be able to support you in that? What's happening in your business that I can advise you in? I'm not going to give you money, I'm not going to solve your problems for you. I want to be counsel for you in your business and the decisions that you've got to make. And microcredits is we've got a facility and a structure for churches to say, we've got excess capital that we want to invest into these businesses, and it's a small repayable loan over 15 weeks that entrepreneurs can invest into their business and see the businesses grow, and that money will be paid back to the church for them to use as a revolving loan fund. So if we go to the next slide, where does this all begin? This is a typical training room setup that's done. And what we really do is we start with the business experience course, which is a one-day program. It's interactive, it's fun, it's experiential learning, and it's just a one-day program. So we ask entrepreneurs to commit to a one day, just to say, come and look at this business training. See if this would be something that you want to invest your time into. See if this is going to be valuable for you to commit to a longer period of education, of learning about business, and of being discipled as well. And on the church's side of it, it's a look at the volunteers that are doing the business training, for them to say, okay, let me commit to a one day, let me see if this is something that resonates with me and catches my heart, and let me commit to a one day of giving business training, interacting with entrepreneurs, and seeing is this going to be having the impact that I want it to have. And after that day, we say there's no commitment. Like at the beginning, we say there's no commitment. If you are done with this day, we wish you well. You don't want to come and you don't feel like coming back. That's great. But we'd love for you to move on to the next level and see your business grow. So we move to the next slide. We'll just look at some of the topics that are trained on the business experience course. Can we go to the next slide? So we're looking at things like pricing and selling, budgeting, advertising, business distinctives. Record keeping is interesting, and income generating investments. And although it's a one-day business course, so we're just touching briefly on these topics, but it's experiential learning. So these entrepreneurs are hearing about it and being able to apply it at the end of the day. We form small groups and say, all right, these are the things we've worked through, how they're fitting in your business. Let's work out some things now so that what they learn today, these entrepreneurs are applying tomorrow in their business to see growth happen. And then we can go to the next slide. Once we move from can we go to the next one? Once we've done the business experience course and we've looked at, is this something that I want to invest my time into? Is this something that I feel is going to be valuable for me to a place where I can learn about business, I can increase my knowledge and skills, and I want to be discipled further. Then we move into weekly meetings, and we ask entrepreneurs and volunteers to commit for 9 weeks at a time. And those 9 weeks, they're just meeting for 1 hour each week, going deeper into business training and discipleship. Excuse me. And what it means is 6 volunteers, 6 business people within the church who have said, I've got a heart to serve the poor. I've got a passion for business. I don't necessarily find an outlet for this in my current church setting. On a Sunday, there's no place for a business person to serve in an area of their passion. And we want to put a resource in business people's hands and the church's hands to say, I'm passionate about business. This is something I can run with. I can serve the church, I can serve the poor, I can serve Christ in an area of my passion. So engaging six business people, which are business trainers as well as life coaches, to coach, train, disciple, and mentor up to 30 entrepreneurs over a 9-week period. And we go to those are just 1 hour sessions. We go to the next slide. We'll look at the topics that we're looking at. And you can see the first 30 minutes of a weekly meeting is going to be a business training topic. The second 30 minutes is going to be a discipleship topic. And we want to really thought about how can we pair these topics and grow on the last week so that it's emphasized for the entrepreneurs that God's not separate from our business. Our business is not isolated from our relationship with Christ. And these flow together. Good. And then we can move on to the next one. We can move on to the next one. There's 2 of these that should have been cut out. So the question really is, how can you be involved? What we do is we partner with the church. We train and equip 6 volunteers from a local church we resource you with a program kit and with training, and we say, you've got a heart for a community. Either your church is already doing work in a community, or you are saying, okay, where do we serve? Where do we find a place to address poverty? If you're in the middle of the city, you don't need to necessarily go out to a rural area or a township to go and find the entrepreneurial poor. The urban hubs are lined with street vendors who have a skill and are often commuting from a township into the city, and actually this is where the entrepreneurs are. Sometimes churches are in a more urban, suburban area, and they say, okay, we've got an area that we're aware of that we want to be involved in. We've got a school that we want to partner with and engage their parents, or we're even currently supporting the children. Actually, we need to support the parents as well. And what does paradigm shift look like in individual communities? That's a conversation to have in a more one-on-one. Let's look at what does your community look like? Where is your community? And how can we make that work? And if we move to the next slide, the next steps would be if you're interested to hear more, chat to me at the breaks or afterwards. In the entrance where you would have registered, I have set up a table there with some brochures, more information, and a sign-up card that you can sign up, put your details, drop it in the box, and when I'm back in the office, I'll be able to contact you again. And just to explore what running a paradigm shift program in your community can look like. And it's actually, I've noticed a few of our program partners are actually here today. So it's exciting to see that business's mission is not something that we talk about, but our churches are saying, actually, this is on our hearts as well. Yeah. And just to the last slide, just to finish off, I got a message last night. One of our programs in Cape Town, we're having their graduation of one of their programs. And this is the 4th cycle of training that they've been doing. So this entrepreneur has been with this church and their course for the last, I think it's 3 or 4 years. And they said that through this business training and this course they've been on, they haven't just received business training and discipleship, but they've actually gained a family along with it, a new community with it, which is incredible for us to hear. And they also, at the end of the night, for this particular church, they all decided that they're going to graduate from their 9-week course in graduation gowns, so black gowns with the hats. And a few of the entrepreneurs said, can you please take a photo of me in this, because my parents couldn't afford for me to go to finish school, and this is such a proud moment for me to say I've achieved something. And the results are not in a certificate that I've got, the results are in a growing business that I'm employing my hand to.
Brilliant.